You unlock this door with the key of conversation. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of question. A dimension of connection. A dimension of thought. You're moving into a podcast of both inquiry and kinship, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Grog Zone. Welcome, everybody. We're trying something kind of new today. Well, we did kind of a test flight of it, and we're still figuring out the name. Right now, it is kind of tentatively calling it the Grog Zone, but it's basically an excuse for me to interview my friends and other people I know or maybe don't know that well, because I like interviewing, but also a little bit because from a podcast that we did last year where I bemoaned you can't just ask people their backstory like you're watching a television show. I thought this would just be a really good excuse to just ask people a bunch of questions you wouldn't normally in life, and try to figure people out and you know, make connections. We're under the Keeping Friendship Magic banner, and I feel like that's fitting for that, of just sort of getting to know people, because again, I don't think my brain would go like, I'm going to talk to, you know, lovely human over here. Actually, let's even begin with that. What should I refer to you, wonderful human over here? I know you by a few names now.
You can refer to me as Mr. Wonderful or Mr. Human. No, you can call me Thoth. That's fine. A lot of people know me by different names, but I'm sure I'll be able to introduce that in a moment. You're more than free to call me Thoth, though.
Certainly. I mean, that's what I've known you as. Anytime friendos call you Brian, which I guess we're gonna bring that up, I have to go, which Brian are you talking about? So, okay, cool.
Right.
So Thoth, I guess let's start. Who you are is just too big of a question to start with. So I guess we start with, like, what do you do? What is a thing that you like to do, or a thing like, I know you are known here. Tell us about what you're known for, and we'll just start spiraling out from there.
Right. I was gonna say, if you didn't rephrase that first one, I would have just said that's what I ask myself when I wake up in the morning every morning.
There you go. Can't start with the two heavy ones. You gotta, you start with the appetizers, and then you get to the soups, and.
Exactly. So what do I do? Hi, Thoth Penswell. What I do generally breaks down to, I am a graduated film student. As you can see behind me, I love film. I watch a lot of movies. That's one thing I do. Another thing I do, I'm one half of a comedy group in the pony fandom, the My Little Pony fandom, called RiffPonies, along with another extremely talented individual named Essential, along with a whole bunch of other friends that we share that time with. Basically, what I love to do is I love to produce content in general. I've often tossed around what that term generally means, like what I fall under, and I guess what it falls under is either producer or content creator. I go with content creator because producer sounds too official.
Yeah,
I'm not
it sounds more like somebody else is doing it, and you're kind of judging along. But you were definitely from what I know, you're one of the main pillars of what you create. So,
right, thank you. Yes, that's generally that's a majority of what I do, I guess. When I'm not doing that, in the more, I guess the not real life, but other capacities of my life. I love sport. I follow sports. Play a lot. Don't play too many video games. That's a thing I do, but sometimes. Watch a lot of movies, like I mentioned before. I write about film. Love film. Geez. Worked in a movie.
You don't got to keep taking the banner. I can get more particular. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting.
I was gonna say, I'll just keep. Right, I'll just keep running with it. Yeah.
Don't let me stop you. But let's get more. So
no, you're good. No, because that's one thing that I know. One thing I know I do is I like to talk. That's probably a way
that's what we're about tonight.
Right. I was gonna say that kind of puts a button in it there and kind of shuts it right there. Is I love to talk, so I guess this is the perfect place for me to be right now.
Would you consider yourself,
among other things,
like an extrovert or an introvert? Because I know some people like to talk, but they're not like. Do you need it? Like, do you run off of it, or like in small doses? Like what?
That is such an interesting question already right off the bat because I constantly ask myself that. I ask my own self that. Um, Having a significant other who been together for about 7, 8 years now, they are very much an introvert. Among other things, social anxiety, a lot of different stuff with my significant other, which they always describe it as kind of a social battery that they need to recharge after a certain amount of time. For me, uh, I definitely have to use that same analogy. I guess I have a bigger battery, and I sort of feed off energy talking to other people. Though eventually I do hit a wall where I'm like, okay, I want space to myself. So I really do love talking, socializing. I guess I would be an extrovert in that sense, but even then, I think extroverts have limits where and I have a limit in that sense where eventually I'm like, okay, I've been like when I go to conventions, I
Yeah.
love
Yep.
conventions. I love interacting with people. Of course, I do that even in the online sphere of it, of interacting with people on it. But after you go through a lot of that social interaction and I feed off that energy, eventually it's like, okay, to use a film analogy, I'm on the
Ooh.
falling action. I kind of just want to coast out, and now I want to be to myself again.
Nice. No,
So,
I
I,
can. Oops, sorry.
no, it's okay. Um, so yeah, I would classify myself as an extrovert. But there's definitely introverted qualities there as well, I guess.
Okay. I would say we're kind of similar in that regard. Maybe that's why, like, I know when we started coming into the same spheres through our good friends, Rose and I guess JR Forward Progress. I never know what I'm going to call people on all these. We all of us
Right.
have handles. It's weird.
It's true.
Everybody's different
It's
about
true.
it. But no, like genuine, like legit speaking, like you are a human being who came into my rotation, and I'm like, this guy's cool. I can't like I haven't actually met you in person yet. I have just heard stories, and like
Oh,
we've
terrible.
interacted in passing in like bigger chat rooms, and that was one of the things I was kind of interested and excited about. This was like one on one because sometimes it's kind of like weird and awkward to talk to somebody that you kind of know in other spheres, but like you haven't interacted one on one to finally do that. And I feel like the sort of
Right.
like interview mechanic, we'll call it, helps that along. So no, I definitely get that. I think we have that similar like performers vibe, but also there's that time when the battery's like, hey, the battery's bigger and I need this sometimes, but there's sometimes it's just like, oh, battery's done. Shut out.
No,
Okay.
yeah, totally.
Do you I guess from that, because I know you like watching movies and we're gonna super get into more movie stuff. Are you? I know you described yourself as a content producer and like producer. Yep. Now, would you consider yourself somebody who wants to be in movies or just more like behind the camera?
Ah, I've always kind of known it. There was a certain point I reached. Uh, I guess this was way back in public school, where I could succinctly say to myself, I'm probably not to be in front of the camera. I say that, but now I put myself out in front of a camera every single month for conventions, whether online or in real life eventually again. So, but if I were to think about where I would end up in production in general, media production, film, television, most likely behind a camera or behind a crew. I would love to be on camera talent sometime somewhere. Um, but between a mix of, needing that experience, which I guess the panels and everything do that, but then there's also self-confidence in getting in my own head.
Yep.
My own head's not a sometimes, but it's basically what it is that I feel like I'm more suited for behind the camera. I'm always more than excited to be in front of a camera and to be able to entertain people. That's
Hmm.
what I do in the communities that I am in, I suppose. But a lot of people have pointed at, well, a lot of people will probably point at like video editing work that I do, and I'll say, yeah, that's probably what I'm the aspect of the job. It's not really a job, but the job, that aspect of the job is what I get really excited about. So I guess behind the camera and behind a lot of the product that goes out is what I will kind of envision myself being in. Yeah.
Is editor kind of your like favorite sort of position when it comes to, you know, like if filmmaking that you'd want to be in, or is it something else? Are you a best boy grip man? what's your kind of
I'm the best boy.
Aw. What's your
No,
like
no.
favored position? Maybe not your like the one that you're the best at, because I feel like someone who's also making content, you have to wear a lot of hats when you want to make things. But that doesn't always mean you like wearing all the hats or that you're good at, or sometimes your favorite hat to wear is not the one you're good at, but it's just the one you enjoy the most. Like what's your one that you enjoyed the most, that you feel like you gravitate towards most directly?
What I can definitely give an answer on that, and what
I
it
would
is
hope
is
so.
that
That's what this is about.
well, yeah, right. Well, what I mean is that I can give you a pretty solid answer on that, in that when I went through college and I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts of Filmmaking, so I went through filmmaking education. It was oriented toward that. Everybody goes into that program uh, wanting to be a director. They want to be the person at the top because of course they want to be. Everyone wants to be the next Orson Welles, maybe not Stanley Kubrick, but I love him, but maybe not him.
Spielberg.
You're right. Everyone, that's maybe not Tarantino, but yes, Spielberg.
Tarantino maybe a decade ago before all the feet and other stuff came out.
Right. But yes, everyone obviously goes into it going like, I'm going to be the next Spielberg. And then you quickly learn that basically what I learned quite early on in filmmaking and film school is that you need to be a very specific kind of person with a very specific mindset and work ethic to be a successful director.
Do tell.
Yeah. You you need to very much be able to coordinate everybody. Granted, we were doing student films, so we probably had more on our shoulders than what would typically be. But in between juggling, reserving equipment, getting all the knowing what exact equipment you wanted, which is, I suppose, would be more the DP's job in a more professional production.
DP.
But having, director of photography, which is basically the cinematographer, handles the camera.
Yeah.
Master of camera. That should be the title. That should be the title. There it is.
Hey.
But when I kind of learned the ropes of how much you needed to do as a director, it wasn't a thing of like, I don't want to do all that work. It's not that sort of thing. But I realized somewhere around sophomore or junior year, I said to myself, okay, I am not made up to be this exactly. But that's fine. And even then, we learned a lot that there's so many different paths through the industry that you may end up as a director anyway. There's an excellent screenwriter out there, Charlie Kaufman, wrote Being John Malkovich, adaptation, a lot of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a lot of excellent films.
Good stuff.
He directs his own films now. So I don't think you ever start as a director. They always told us you not ever, but you don't really start as a director, and you start in your own corner that you enjoy. You find your corner, your niche, basically. To get back to the original question, my niche, I guess, yeah, the aspect that I really took to when I was going through film school, even as early as high school, when I started with high school films, was the video editing process. I loved that. That felt like a creative outlet for me. Whenever I sat down, had a bunch of video footage, had music, had a way to easily cut everything, and initially that started with iMovie, we were cutting. We were. um, I'm not going to name what school I went to, but because our
We
school
don't need to
really
do
did
that.
not. Well, yeah, right. Because my school wasn't really big on the AV department. Um, they did not give us too much to work with in the film courses. So we were filming on Sony hand camcorders and editing on iMovie on Macs, which
Fun.
yeah, for which and you might know because you do a lot of excellent video editing. I will
Oh,
say that.
jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna throw praise at me. I do it at you too. But basically to give some people who may not know out there kind of an analogy, um, iMovie, not even an analogy, just an explanation of why it's funny that we were editing on iMovie, editing student films on that. iMovie is kind of the software that you use to like edit. And no offense to anyone who may be learning how to edit on iMovie, because it's a good opening tool to kind of like get an idea of what cutting, video editing, footage cutting, and audio cutting is like. But iMovie is intended for like editing together a family vacation video. Not the best for like a student film.
Yeah,
So what?
Windows Movie on the Windows side, it'd be Windows Movie Maker, of a very just sort of like to the point. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. It's not really that
Yep.
powerful. Probably shouldn't be using it to cut movies together. You could. It's difficult. I've edited stuff with it back in the day before I got my hands on a real one. But yeah, no, I
Yep.
totally understand.
Right. So, and then eventually, moved on to Adobe Premiere. And Adobe Premiere is great. I love Adobe Premiere. Had to kind of be taught a little bit how to use Avid in college, and I wasn't a fan of Avid.
What is
I know
that?
it's the industry standard, Avid Media Composer.
Uh,
Avid Media Composer, which which is basically it's considered the industry standard is what they constantly told us. And using it, it's kind of clunky. It's all keyboard commands, not a lot of mouse commands used, which I like the freedom of doing that. More flexible. I feel like it's a lot easier to access, and I don't need to, like, there are some keyboards out there that you have to put a set of stickers on it
just so you know.
for the right, exactly. So you know key commands and key shortcuts, which granted there's key shortcuts in Adobe Premiere, but that's kind of optional. You can also just do it manually, which I guess other people who are more experienced may say, well, that's clunky. Maybe, but Avid does not give you the option as far as I can tell. It's mostly key shortcuts, which for me was just like hurt my brain,
A little too much. You want to get in there and you want to do your job. You want to be learning how to do that, not how to literally use the tool
right,
to actually
exactly.
do the job,
Precisely. But yeah, I took to the editing process. Just I loved that idea of, because to me, editing really makes whatever you're making. I feel that sounds weird, but I'll elaborate on that.
I totally understand, because it's the
Okay,
ending piece. I guess little side tangent to throw some other film stuff that's popping in my brain.
Cool.
Go
ahead.
And you will know more than anybody because you've been inside the machine of it. It is always crazy to me is that a script is written, which is already like a story in some form, and then a different human who is not the writer, our director, then tries to create their own vision out of that, and then whatever's recorded then gets set to editing, which can then be turned into something still entirely different than even one step ago, let alone the script portion. Is my thought process of like the craziness of that on point?
Oh no, you're spot on. I mean, to give you an idea, one of the first things about editing that my high school film professor ever told me was that, like, something as simple as music, one simple music track switch can turn a comedy into a horror.
Yes.
And it's true. And to me, that was so amazing. going through that, whenever I would get through the shooting of what I wanted to make, I'd get through the screenwriting, which I do love screenwriting as well. I love composing a screenplay. That's a very time-consuming process. That's one thing, though. But editing, as soon as I get footage or I have, like, for example, an idea for some of panel intros that I've done for online conventions and everything. When I get an idea and I'm assembling clips and I have all these clips and audio files in Premiere, and I sit there and I start composing, that goes like that. I'm like, that's the light switch goes and I'm off, because and that's the thing, is I love that editing, video editing specifically, and audio editing too, to an extent, because I've done some audio editing, and it's a similar feel where you get your own flavor and voice out through that. I've only ever really done it through student films and the content I create in the fandom, but even so, when I do that, I always feel like my voice is finally coming through when I have it in Premiere or whichever editing program I'm in, and I'm cutting it, and I'm like, this is what I envisioned from the start.
Wow.
Because another thing that's funny about screenwriting is that I will write. This was a thing that they don't typically tell you to do in. They didn't really say to do this when I went through screenwriting in college, but I would write in music cues. I would write in different ways I'd want to cut it or angles, and they would tell me, "Well, you're not supposed to do that yet." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I can see it. I can see my editing, and I can see the choices I want to make right here already." So whenever I'd get through screenwriting or shooting or any kind of production prior, I would be engaged. But then when I get to editing and I get to piecing it together and cutting that together, that's where my wheelhouse is, I think. That's my happy place, in a way.
Do you feel like you work like that in a lot of your projects, where you have that kind of picture in your mind's eye and you're just trying to, like, get it out of your brain? Or is it sometimes like I've definitely had that with some of the stuff I've worked on, where it's just I have an image in my brain, and then sometimes I will get to the end and I'll have made whatever that is, and it'll match it and I'll be really happy with it, or it'll match it and I'll hate it, or it'll be something completely different and it'll be fantastic, and you just never know. So what's yours with that? Do you try to hew to that? Do you find that always leads you in the right direction? Do you have good instincts? You seem like someone who has good instincts, but obviously it's your experience. You tell me.
Trying to butter me up here.
I'm not just gonna actively be rude to you. Jeez.
I know.
I've seen your work that you have thrown yourself under the bus over, and I thought it's fantastic. And I'm like, how did he do that? And you act like it's just something you did on any other regular Sunday. And I'm like, that was really impressive. I never would have thought to do that. To do it, or how you did it, and it's always really impressive. So I'm like curious, how much is it something where you have that picture? And you're right. If you have the skills and the tools to be able to translate that into media, or if it's something where you kind of have a seed of inspiration, and then you kind of, I need a better way to make this sound more put together than it is, but kind of like you kind of feel around until you find something with it. Because I've definitely had that too. I want to see kind of how what your process is.
Right. I understand what you're saying completely. No worries. It's half and half of what you're describing, where half of it is definitely, it might be a cause and effect, really. I take a lot of inspiration from the media that I consume. As you can see behind me, a lot of that kind of inspires different things that I do. I like to take something that I really enjoy and then incorporate it. At the same time, though, and that goes for like panel intros and stuff, if I have some kind of influence there, I'm like, okay, like one of them, I did it in the style, I did a panel intro after like 5 months of being in quarantine, because I had recently watched Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and there's a line about there's a line kind of similar to that, and I was like, okay. And also, it's a film about isolation, kind of going mad, staying inside, that sort of thing, cabin fever. So
I feel
I
that,
said to
yeah.
myself, all right, there's an idea there. So what can I do with that? And then I pictured it in my head, kind of like what you're describing. I saw, okay, the intro to The Shining is really iconic. What if I just emulated that somehow in a panel intro? And then it's like, I got it. So then I jump into Adobe Premiere, start doing that. And what'll typically happen, and some of the people who've worked with me, they may or may not admit to it, but and it's fine. It's either or. But there will be a lot of cases where I'll have a concept for a panel intro or a panel in general or an event or doing some kind of event or some kind of product, something I want to produce.
Mm.
And what'll happen is I will be hurtling towards that so fast because I'm like, okay, I have this in my head now and I'm going to work toward it already. I will have people who work with me who are like, okay, you need to slow down and you need to tell me what's happening. And I'm like, fair enough. Because that does happen a lot where I will have an idea and I'll start working toward it. And I've only told some of the people I work with, this will happen sometimes. I've only told the people I work with only so much of that idea. And then it's like, okay, where are we? Someone will be like, where are we at here? And I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do all this. And that's why, like, Ace and a lot of the people that we work with in RiffPonies, I've barely talked about RiffPonies, so that's probably a whole other thing to talk about. But
We'll get there if we get there.
right, exactly, if I don't talk too much. When we're conceptualizing panel ideas, content ideas, Ace often lets me take the reins on that, mostly because I'm just moving so fast towards an idea, and I'm like, I have it in my head, like, okay, I want these people. Like, we're gonna do a panel where we get a bunch of different artists to do art-based Jackbox games, and we're going to have audience participation on that for an online con. We've done that. That's Equestria's next top artist. Already, by the time I have that idea like lodged in my head, I'm already like, okay, here's a bunch of artists I want to get. I'm gonna go contact them, and then like a week later, I've only told Ace only so much. I've only told him like the concept, and then I'm like, okay, I got all these people for it. They're all going to be on this panel, and he's like, okay, thank you. And that's kind of what happens, is that by the time we reach an online con, he's like, okay, you need to tell me all of the panels that we're doing, who's on them all. So it's almost like I would say it's fair to say, I guess he trusts me to have that all figured out at that point, because again, the producing side of it, and I love working with people. So when I can, and I love working with really talented people, other talented people. So when it comes to that sort of thing and working with other people and working towards an idea, like you were talking about before, like if I envision it or if there's something that inspires it, it's kind of a mix of both, where it's something will spark it, and then I'm like, okay, I know what I want to do, and I start moving toward it and working as hard as possible and planning it in a bunch of different documents, a bunch of different places. And then eventually it comes to catching everybody up with it, because I've already jumped like a bunch of steps ahead, and it's like, okay, I need to bring it back a little, you know. But
You seem like somebody that has like a strong vision, and I know sometimes trying to communicate that to other people can be difficult, because it's like all these lights and sounds
yeah,
and pictures in your head, and you're like trying to beam them to other people, and it's just, I mean, that's I guess what film is, but until it's done,
right.
you can't beam it
And
until we get the helmets that let you beam your thoughts.
right, and a lot of that, what also requires in that equation is, I count on a lot of other people. Count on a lot of other people to help realize that vision, and that's something I always emphasize whenever I talk about like the work I do in Discord servers, like BlepCon, or the Film Discord. I run movie screenings in both of those. I help run events in them. Or when it comes to content with RiffPonies, I always work with a bunch of other incredibly talented people more talented than I, way more. And because of that, that's why I always emphasize whenever it comes to that, I always make sure I say we and not I when I talk about the work that is being done or the content that we put out. I always make sure that I say we or our, because it's a bunch of other people. I liken it to, I put all of these really talented and funny and charming people together, and that's what makes it. It's not, you're gonna laugh at this, but it's not any contribution of mine other than just getting those people in the room.
No, there's something to say to that, and that's a lot of there's a lot of skill in just knowing who to get together and how to get them together, and that seems kind of your thing of it. I am so curious to talk to Ace now, because I don't think I've ever knowingly interacted with them. It is always you, but everybody is constantly talking about Ace, and I'm so curious what the dynamic is between the two of you when creating stuff.
We actually just talked this morning about stuff like plans for when physical cons are back. He came to me about an idea that involved artwork, and of course that's one of the departments that Ace handles with RiffPonies. And as soon as he came to me with it, I'm like, absolutely, we'll do that. This is my chance to say this here. Ace, I would not, the RiffPonies stuff, all of the stuff we've been able to do, community guest spots, probably over in somewhere a lot of panels. I don't want to make an estimate of how many, but we wouldn't be where it's at, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do within the fandom. We wouldn't be able to do what we do within the fandom if it wasn't for everything that Essential does as the part of it. I probably wouldn't be a lot of people hail this credit upon us and upon me, which I never take. You know this. A lot of people know that.
I know this, and actively usually say mean things that you're not more nice to yourself.
But no, I always give the majority of the credit to Essential because he's incredible. He's an amazing artist. He's done comic books for conventions. He vends, he does commissions. You should check them out. But
we'll do our tags at the end.
Right. He streams. He's incredible at improv. So many amazing things that he can do that really, I feel, is the root of a lot of the charm that RiffPonies has, and the reason we have a lot of people that follow us, because the goal is always with the RiffPonies content is to entertain people. And right now, more than ever, we love to distract people. We love to distract people from the way the world currently is, and that's what
we need.
And that's what I use the conventions for. That's what we use the panels for. But yeah, with a forum like this, I can say it very firmly, is that the credit doesn't go to me. Put the credit to Essential.
The credit goes to both of you. You collectively, as a unit, have built something special. Clearly,
yes,
we've been working together how many years, and all the stuff that you've put together. I don't even think I've even, like I said, I haven't even met you in person. I've never even seen like an in-person one, but I've seen bits and clips. I've heard like tall tales and stories. Like there's something. They sound mythic, my dude. Like I'm not joking, but like that's. Take some of it. As someone who's also was bad and is sometimes bad about taking compliments, like accept some of that power that you've generated between you and Ace and everybody else you've worked with.
Right, and I was going to say, and that reminds me, is that along with Ace, a lot of the credit goes to the amazing people that we work with, that we've had the chance to work with, whether on one panel or a majority of them now, whether that be Forward Progress, our friend Jer, Silver Quill, Pirate Dash, all of these, Choco Pony. I'm gonna rattle off names here. I don't
Put
want
them
to
all
rattle
over.
off
Why
all
not?
of them.
Now's the time.
Right. uh, Jeez, Roof, Techie, Scope, bunch of amazing everybody that we've ever done panels with in the fandom, that a lot of the credit goes to them as well, and they're part of what we do. People always kind of associate me and and Argenbarger too. People a lot of the times associate me and Ace as kind of like the figures of it, and I guess we kind of are, because majority of the time we're the ones putting together this content.
You're the central
But
pillar.
there's also, right, in a way, we started out with 4 of us years ago. It was myself, Ace, and a couple of other friends of ours, and then it kind of pared down to us. And now what we do, someone made an interesting analogy one time that they compared us to, not in tone but in execution, they compared us as the 9-inch nails of the pony panel creation community.
Please elucidate.
Because what we do is that 9-inch nails as a band, if you don't know, or anybody else doesn't know out there, at its core is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, 2 creators. And then when they go on tour, play music across the country, across the world, they go and they get the other really talented people from other corners of the music industry, and collaborate with them on tour. So someone once made that comparison, and I'm like I said before, maybe not in tone, because I'll say this: RiffPonies and 9-inch nails are like this far apart.
I think I have a better one that still fits that it's a band.
Go for it.
The Blues Brothers.
Yes. You know what? That's a perfect comparison, actually.
You're the 2 frontmen. You're the people know, but like you've seen the Blues Brothers, like all of the like soul funk legends behind. Yeah, exactly. He knows the exact spot on the shelf the movie is. There you go.
Yeah, I do. That's because they're alphabetized.
Smart man. No, but it's, you're the 2 frontmen. Maybe that's the name on the placard, but like, the real muscle of it is all of these,
right, getting all these talented
killers
people
of the industry you're bringing in. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so far over the last few years, we get more and more privileged to get these more and more talented people to work with us, and that's amazing. I'm always amazed about the people that were able to get on board with us, and then we always make sure that when we get these people on board, that they have a sort of voice and tone and chemistry that kind of gels with what we do. And more often than not, it sticks, and then it suddenly feels like we're friends. And that's great, because when you feel like, when it stops being that, this is a threshold that I think we've crossed often when we do panel content in the fandom, when it stops being a bunch of us, when it stops being we got people on and they're working with us on a panel, becomes, it's just a bunch of friends hanging out and having a good time. That, to me, is when that chemistry clicks, and they become like a frequent collaborator because of that. That's not to say we're not friends with all the people we've worked with. I like to think we are.
Yeah, but it's,
although somebody could be harboring some kind of grudge against
secret
us.
No, but I can see what you're getting at. It's just like when everybody's firing on all cylinders, but it doesn't feel like work, and you're just sort of joking around. Everybody's having a good time. Yeah, that's definitely something special. And not everybody's gonna, like you said, it's chemistry. Chemistry doesn't always work out the same with everybody, and that doesn't say anything ill of anybody involved when it does or doesn't.
No, I was gonna say absolutely not. Any of the people that we worked with, I would never say anything ill of them, because they're all incredible. They help elevate our content even more. and they're all hilarious, and they're all amazing people. It just adds to it. That's what makes it even more fun, you know.
That's fantastic. Okay, let's go off into the bushes right now. So you are someone who considers himself a content creator. Um, where do you find motivation to work on projects? Are you someone who's able to keep the fire stoked consistently? Do they come and they go? Like what? You're clearly also somebody who's been doing this for a while and literally went to school for it. Like what's your what keeps you on a project? How do how you do it?
Right. I guess what keeps me working oftentimes is the picture in my head of like the reaction it'll get from an audience when it's eventually done. Uh, whether that be having a concept for a panel and getting people to get on that panel working to develop the kernel of that idea, or just making a panel intro to introduce a panel and adding a few bells and whistles and songs and editing on beat get for it to enough to be like charming or funny.
Yeah.
Getting that reception and entertaining is kind of what drives me most about that. And in regards to whether it's always going or if it comes and goes, I definitely will hit creative funks every now and then. I definitely need breaks every now and then. Speaking to that, breaks and needing downtime from it, that's what Ace and I and a bunch of the other people who do RiffPonies with us, that's what we've been doing for the last month or two, is that after 2020 was just relentless with the online conventions, which was great. I don't want that to ever be miscommunicated.
No,
that it was
I think
great
people needed it.
Right, that we had so much to do, and it helped to just put us at a different level than we were at before online conventions became every single month, every other week. Prior to that, it would definitely be in spurts. But then as we went along, it became a thing where we needed a break eventually, and we've been taking that. And now next month we're going to start up, hopefully start up conventions and online conventions again. So that'll be fun. Yeah, but to go back to what you were saying, once you get in a groove, and another friend of ours, Forward Progress, can speak to this. When we are in a groove and we have content ideas going, I can go for days and weeks at a time with ideas, for sure. I can definitely get tired, but I typically don't lose the fire that I've got going if I've got a project sitting on Adobe Premiere, for example, or I have a document that's like, okay, here's mapping out this panel concept, or here's these people that I want to get onto it. The excitement of being able to put that together, realize it, see it to its completion, and get a reaction out of an audience, which the reaction we go for oftentimes is laughter, entertainment. We love to make people laugh. So in that sense, when you're chasing that, it's a bit different with the online cons now, because you don't get that. Forward and I have talked about this in panels, but you don't get that immediate reaction of an entire room laughing at something, being entertained by something.
Doesn't quite scratch the same itch.
No, it doesn't. But the text chats still satisfy that, and when people were saying that they had a great time, and people who were in the panel itself, when we're in those voice calls and recordings doing it, and if they're laughing and having a good time, then that's the reaction that I think is what drives us, and to a lesser extent drives me, because like when we're sitting there and we're playing a panel intro, for example, which is, I guess, is a thing that's become synonymous with the RiffPonies panels, that there's always some overly elaborate intro that I put
immaculately
together.
Edited intro wording.
When we play that, Ace plays that through OBS, because Ace also handles the streaming, and he does a fantastic job at that. I'm still trying to learn OBS and streaming right now, so all credit goes to him for that as well. But when he's playing that and it's starting the panel off, and we have, this is just random anecdotes I'm thinking of, when he's playing the intro that I spent the last like 2 weeks putting together and laughing at and going, okay, I like what I did here. Hopefully this gets, every beat of it gets the reaction I want out of it. When I hear the co-panelists in the chat as we're waiting to start, and we're muted at the time, the stream can't hear us while the intro's playing, but it's always great. What everyone out there misses during those panel intros, a bunch of people cracking up at things in it, and me just sitting there like sipping on whatever drink I have because I'm getting the reactions I want, and I don't want to show any pleasure in that because you know how I am with my self-confidence. But I'm sitting there grinning to myself like, this is getting every reaction.
You don't want to revel in it all? Totally earned reaction. Like, it's not like you just rolled out of bed in the morning. You put a lot of work into those things.
I know. Yeah, that is a thing that people constantly talk about, and even Forward Progress and Essential have pointed it out to me, is that I do need to take more pride in that work, and I do. It's true. I do. I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge the a lot of the self-deprecation humor that I roll with. Half of it is rooted in fact, half of it is rooted in, yes, I kind of feel that way, but another half of it is kind of an act, but it blurs for people, of course.
No, I've been there, and it's the moment where you start going, oh yeah, the act is, the part that's quote-unquote fake is pushing on the reality bit, and it's just, I don't know.
Exactly.
You will be a more strong person if you kind of, I don't know, tuck up. Don't tuck down.
Yeah.
You're a good homie. Trying to get across.
But yeah, I guess what that is that it comes from a lot of things, but mainly comes from just, I guess, keeping myself in check, because I don't want to lose, I guess, me in this idea that there's a term people in the pony fandom people like to say, used to at least, horse famous.
I love raking forward over the coals about horse famous. I refer
horse
to
known.
That's I was literally just gonna say that's what I refer to him as now, is horse known. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that whole idea of being well known in the fandom, and I acknowledge that is a thing, and we've been community guests at conventions at this point, so I guess we're orbiting that. But the one thing I always tell myself is that I don't want to lose. I both don't want to lose myself in that and get this idea like, oh, we're big shots now, because we're not. We still are just people putting together content to entertain people, and that's what that's what I think we try to keep at the forefront of it. But that being said, yeah, I definitely need to probably work on taking compliments better.
Yeah,
but that just comes from a whole.
Have pride in your work. There's a difference between having like a big head about something and
this might be one of the things that's rooted in, is that my high school film professor once said that half of you needs to hate your work and half of you needs to love your work. So that may be the balance that I work at, and still do work at to this day. But when people now actively try to tell me, try to pay compliment to me about that work, whether it be RiffPonies or different other side projects that I do outside of that, every once in a while I take it to heart, and
let it warm your core.
Yeah, no, yeah, there it does. Eventually, I do let myself do it, but I keep that little bit of self-deprecation just to keep myself in my head, keep myself in check. But
it's not bad to have like a little bit of, you don't want to just constantly go, oh, everything I make is amazing and all that. It's good to have a little bit, but yeah, right. don't let it overturn,
Right, and that's part of, to go back to the original question at hand, that's part of the, what drives me is getting that reaction from people, and like I detailed before, the things that people don't hear during the panel, where while they're watching some goofy intro that I put together, all the other co-panelists are laughing watching this, and I'm like, yeah, this is the reaction I wanted, so I can let that warm my cold dead heart a little bit. So,
Cool.
but yeah, that's what drives me, is realizing that picture I have in my head, and also the ultimately entertaining people. So
Cool.
yeah.
Let's change gears for a moment. So you've already described, literally it's been touching everything we've talked about there. You are big into filmmaking, watching films. You've got your entire shelf of movies right behind you. And is that television and movies or just movies?
This is movies. I was going to say this is not all of it. There is also another shelf back there out of camera.
There you
So,
go. So, I mean,
yeah.
like, most everybody likes movies, but, like, you are a movie guy. Like, I have known this, as you've already described. You run the movie nights on BlepCon that I've poked my head in every so often. Like, there are just certain people who are just, this is a movie human. This person is, you both watch movies, but this person is just vibrating on a different frequency of film than you can comprehend.
Right.
As we dig into that, like, what, and clearly it's been for a long time, because you were doing, like, has it been, like, have you had this since you were, like, a kid? I say have this like it's some sort of, like, a venereal disease.
Right.
Have you known yourself to be into film this much since you were a kid, or is it something that happened later? Like, what I want to get, like, the main question I want to get to then is, like, what is it about film that just resonates with you so greatly, I guess?
Right. I guess there was a certain. I always loved watching movies as a kid, as most kids do, because it's sound and color. It stimulates.
It's a good time.
Yeah. I guess where that stopped being just the normal thing and turned into a higher level of that is the fact that my mother kind of just let me watch whatever I wanted as a kid. The only rule was that if there was bad language in it, I could not repeat it. That was the only rule. So what
That's
that
quite
resulted
the
in, and I may use some visual aids here. Pardon if it does or does not show up on camera. So that resulted in little Thoth, 5-year-old Thoth, watching an R-rated film for the first time. It was The Terminator, of course. But yeah, I watched pretty much anything that I could get my hands on at an early age. I had an uncle who would basically, still do, didn't pass away, he's still around, but he would basically introduce me to all of this different, any kind of movies that I probably should or should not have been watching as a 5-year-old. That whether that be The Terminator, Alien, Predator, and there was also a video store down the street from my house, local place. Not,
I was just gonna ask, mom and pop or a chain?
Mom and pop.
Okay,
Yeah, it was called
nice.
Video Views.
Ooh,
And once
classic.
I discovered their Godzilla section, I just took off from there.
Yeah, I can see
But
the Godzilla poster behind you up there, painting
oh,
above your stack.
that's not a poster. This is a okay, I'm gonna go movie nerd on you here.
Go for it. That's what this is about.
Yes. This is the Criterion Collection's Godzilla Showa era Blu-ray collection, which is basically the first 15 Godzilla films that were produced, the Japanese ones, that is. This is massive.
Yeah,
And
it's huge. It's
like,
Godzilla size,
yep,
you could say.
exactly. It's funny. My girlfriend was just remarking the other day that I could very well kill a person with this.
It doesn't look super heavy. Is it got some heft to it?
I mean, you hear that. It's solid. If you caught me on a good day, maybe. But no, yeah. So a lot of that came from just being around places that had a lot of movies, and that introduced me to just watching stuff that was probably beyond what I should have been watching, but it got me interested in a lot of it. I would watch like one of the first movies that ever fascinated me watching it was Ridley Scott's Alien, because it was just
It's a very
not
fascinating movie.
what was not what me as a kid was used to. You grow up with Disney movies, and I grew up as my family is a Disney family, and I was a Disney kid, not passionately so, but I still have Disney videotapes downstairs.
I feel
So
like a lot
when
of
you
us
go
in that era did.
right, so when you go from like watching like Robin Hood and everything a lot to now I'm watching an alien burst from John Hurt's chest.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it opens up a whole other world, I guess. And then I watched to kind of go into it a little bit further. Picked up and started watching like Stanley Kubrick films at a certain point when I was 12 or 13. 2001: A Space Odyssey specifically
I guess
was
trying
the
to
one
dig
that
deeper
just
of like what about those besides them just being different fascinated you, because I can see there's this alternate timeline where little short pants 5-year-old you sees Alien and is terrified of film and 180s entirely. Like
right.
What happened is not, I don't know if it's the norm or what, or even just what you'd expect to happen. Like what was it literally just that it was something different than you had seen before, or was there something about, like, is there even a kind of related question, like, is there a certain genre either then or now that pulls to you more?
I think another part of it that incorporates into that, to answer the question about genre, it's to relate to Alien, sci-fi constantly is the thing that I find myself going back to, that always just captures my mind, and that you can do all of these creative things through that medium, specifically in the genre of sci-fi. To unpack why I was drawn to it, another part of it was the fact that I grew up I was starting to grow into adolescence and eventually into my teenage years when YouTube was beginning to develop as a big content creation place. And because of that, a lot of people would talk about film on there. And that opened my mind quite a bit, where it's like I go and watch, say, James Rolfe, Cinemassacre. He's talking about like horror movies that I've never seen before, or science fiction movies where he's showing these crazy ideas and monsters in it, and I'm like, that looks interesting. How did they make that? What is a movie like that? What is that idea like on the screen? And that's the thing that really I love about film in general, is that outlet for creativity and being able to tell. Anybody can tell any story that they want to in that medium, and 99.9% of the time, unless you're an experimental film, it's always, visual. It's a complete package of visual and audio, and when you put all that together, it's an experience. And that's the thing that I love about going to movie theaters. I know a lot of people are talking now about how, do we need movie theaters? Because now they're seeing more and more Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, the convenience. People see the convenience over the experience. But I've always been about movie theaters. I've always been about the experience that is film and cinema, because to me, someone may argue with me on this out there, maybe a central will, but I feel like there is no other experience than like film and storytelling through film and animation. Daisy changed that as well. That's what inspires me to have a whole shelf full of it here, is that there's hundreds and hundreds of different stories from different perspectives and different places and different ideas here. And that's amazing to me, that I'm getting it, like I'm getting really philosophical here about like the core.
That's what I want to know. That's what I want to get at. So
but that's like the kernel of why I love film, is that you can explore so many ideas, ideologies, different weird things. Like an example I can cite. I named him earlier, but it's because he's one of my favorite screenwriters all time. Charlie Kaufman. when I watched Being John Malkovich for the first time, and if anybody has never seen Being John Malkovich out there, I'm going to give a quick log line. It won't spoil anything.
Thank you.
That movie, yeah, it's an excellent film. One of my
Oh no,
all-time favorites.
it is on my list. I know what it's generally about, but for our listeners.
Okay, cool. For listeners out there, Being John Malkovich is about a guy who he's a puppeteer, kind of a failing puppeteer. He goes to work in an office building on the 7.5 floor of a building. I'm not going to tell you how that looks visually. You just have to imagine it until you see it. He works on the 7.5 floor of an office building. And while he's working there and dreaming about like being a different person, he doesn't want to be the person he is because he's a puppeteer. He desires to be something else and act something else. He discovers randomly one day there is a hole in the office building that if you go down it, you occupy the mind of the actor John Malkovich. And I won't elaborate from there because, believe me, I've given you like 5-10%, not even 10%, 5% of the plot. And
I think you've given enough to, you've given the hook.
But that is such an interesting idea. Like it makes me angry not angry, but it makes me so excited talking about that and that I didn't think of that. But that's such an out there idea and so unique. And film can do that. And I feel like you can't do that and say, maybe you could do it through music. There's definitely concept albums, different things that are just as, that can go into those territories. Pink Floyd, I love Pink Floyd because they do something similar to that, where they explore a big grand story through just audio, through music. But I feel like for a story like that, something that unique and interesting and totally out there, you would never think of it in a million years, film is where you realize that. And then when it comes to my background and learning about editing and cinematography and everything, when I have that knowledge as well, it makes it a pain to watch movies with me because I'll point out all the technicals. I'll be like, oh, that's a neat shot. I can name the shot that it is. I know the trivia about the shot. But that's what inspires me to research it that deep and be that passionate and collect all this. Is I just love I love watching it. I love analyzing it, picking apart every shot. I love talking about it with people. I'm almost disappointed that right now there were a lot of different like meetup groups in New York City that were dedicated to film and discussing just film groups in general. And I ran film screenings in the city at some points for Brony groups, but I never really interacted on that. And that's where I get a lot of my interaction analyzing film now, is in various Discords and online communities.
Yeah, that's where we're at now.
Right, exactly. But I would do it in film school in college too. One of the reputation that I got in film school was, whenever someone once said to me that film students and filmmakers they said they don't watch a lot of films because they're too busy making their own. That's something they said. I don't know if that's something a lot of people subscribe to, filmmakers or film students subscribe to, but that's what someone once said. And with me, and they were pointing this out because I would constantly talk about movies that I was watching. They were like, but you're different about that. They would point me out as that. And then what that turned into by senior year of film school is that whenever a film professor in a class would like name a movie, no matter how obscure, no matter how well known, a professor would ask, like, who's seen this? Not a lot of people would raise hands. There would always be someone who would go, oh, I'm going to use my name here. They would go, oh, Brian's probably seen it. And sure enough, I was raising my hand because I'd seen it. So that was the reputation I got there. So maybe what it is that I do kind of, in a way, regret that I didn't make that I didn't make as much as a lot of other people were making in film school, film wise, student film wise. Maybe sometimes I do regret that, but at the same time, like I just love consuming it. I love consuming it and breathing it and discussing it. I'm beyond blessed to have a significant other who loves discussing it as much as I do. Um, for the first time earlier this week, uh, my significant other, they wanted to watch RoboCop and The Sixth Sense because they had never seen them.
Freaking
They had never seen
RoboCop.
those movies. I love RoboCop so much.
It's pretty much perfect. RoboCop freaking rules.
It is,
And it
to
gets
show
better with age. Yeah, hit some more RoboCop up.
It does. What?
I thought you were grabbing
What's
RoboCop. It seemed like that's what you were going.
Oh no, yeah, I was about to say, like, oh no, yeah, I'm gonna show off my nerd cred here. I have an out-of-print limited edition Criterion collection of RoboCop on DVD, and then I have a limited edition out-of-print Arrow video. This is a great set, by the way. This is a Blu-ray set, really good. Really expensive though. This was a lot, so buyer beware.
RoboCop though.
But yes, no, it's worth it.
Yeah, no, it is.
And when like, and that's the thing that drives me the most, because the thing I love most about film is sharing really excellent film with people, and that's why I run movie night and BlepCon, and why I run a thing in the film Discord, Midnight Movies, where I show a movie, have been showing a movie almost every night for the last year.
Wow.
And it's just because I love sharing film with people. My girlfriend, for example, when we watched The Sixth Sense, she wasn't crazy on RoboCop. She thought it was really, really strange in a good way.
Okay.
But it's whatever.
Yeah.
It is like that. It's fine. But we watched The Sixth Sense. She loved it, and I got this massive reaction from her that, and when I do like the film Discord, for example, like last night, I screened. I don't know. You may be familiar with it. I screened the anime film Your Name, and just everybody was in love with it by the end of it.
Everybody loves that movie.
And
I have not personally seen it, but yeah, I've heard a lot of good things.
It's really excellent.
Oh, I know.
And I'm right, and I'm not this massive anime fan, but I really love it. But that is the kind of thing that I maybe some people have suggested that I should like run a movie theater or something, and that's kind of what I do right now. I run a movie theater out of my living room.
When the world opens back up, like, you seem like someone who would run a local theater, not like the big AMC or whatever, but like there's a couple of them dotted around. We have one in our city in where I'm based.
I mean,
if you don't have one, like that's a dream spot. There's a podcast I listen to of people down in Florida, and one of his buddies runs one, and every time he's talking about stuff, I genuinely do think of you for that. That seems like something that you would be. You are the guy that this job doesn't exist anymore, but you are the guy at the video store telling people what to get.
That's what I said.
And I mean that in the best, nicest, most positive way possible.
No, of course. It reminds me of, I literally made a post on social media a few months back saying something to that exact effect. I was being joking because I like to be sarcastic in some social media posts, where I said something to the effect of like, I feel like I could be a good video store owner. Anybody got openings? And it's like I laugh about it, but it's also like, yeah, I probably missed my wheelhouse about 20 years ago, didn't I?
A couple decades out of print for it.
Yeah, but if it were a pipe dream, running like a movie theater, or even just helping manage it, or managing like a retro sort of video store, like the last Blockbuster, for example, that's still out there. That could very well be a pipe dream place where I'd just be in heaven. I mean, you mentioned it. prior to the quarantine, I was working in a movie theater. I was working at a Cinemark, but and that was great. I loved the people I worked with there. I loved working with the public that was coming to see movies, and they would always place me as I worked as an usher there, but they would always place me as a ticket tearer because I'd be the front line of working with people. I'd be the last face they see before going into the theater. I'd direct them. Occasionally, if they were seeing a film that I happened to see and I really loved, I would be like, "Yeah, have a good time. It's a really good film," and then we'd get into talking about that. And that I guess that is another part of why I love film and consuming it and talking about it, is because I can talk to people about it, and it's always the best talking about it.
It's positive.
And
you are like, hearing you talk about all of this, like you are radiating a light right now. Like I can feel it. Like this. I wanted to say like childish love, but that makes it sound like small in it. But it's like you genuinely love film and movies and sharing it with people. And I feel like of you describing, seeing people on YouTube, of like, there is a good chunk of cynicism in a lot of that, but it's like you seem to have like this just sort of to your core, to your whatever chords that are you, that when your guitar of life, I have no idea where we're going with this. Your guitar of life is strummed. Where is this coming from? You've got me all like jazzed up. I'm like feeding off of your energy. Like that is one of yours. Yeah, right. I'm freaking feeding off of it. We're all stuck inside. I'll take it where I can get it. But no, like you seem like genuinely at your core. Like there's a bunch of things that but like you are like, this is a part of your being, and that is just awesome. I wish I had better verbiage right now, but my brain's all freaking awash. But like it is a beauty and joy to see your love of film, and I hope we can share a film at some point.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah.
I gotta take you, Jer, and Rose to Alamo Drafthouse when we can eventually do.
They cannot stop talking about that time. The one you guys saw Sonic at the Alamo Drafthouse before the world shut down. Say,
yeah, that was like right before too. To gush a little bit about that, the best theater going experience, not right now obviously, but when things eventually normalize and before things were crazy, was far and away Alamo Drafthouse. That is a theater I would love to work for, because they capture that sort of essence that you're talking about, I'm emanating here, that essence of like loving the movies. Like you can go to an AMC or a chain and you're there watching the movie and it's like, yeah, they're showing the movies.
I'm at the place where the movie goes, but yeah, it's not like
right. Alamo Drafthouse, that they have menus that are themed to specific movies. They have pre-shows that are themed to the movie you're seeing. They'll show stuff from the current year. They'll show stuff from 60 years ago if they want to.
That's all stuff you do. That is literally a description of also of what you do in BlepCon.
Like that is the thing that that is if I could run a theater, which I guess I technically do, and not really,
a physical place, a mecca of film,
a movie palace, as they called it about a century ago. Yeah. But if I were ever running a movie theater or theater chain, Drafthouse would be the place that I would want to model it off of, because that whenever I was there, that was like being in an amusement park for me.
I hope
an amusement park for movies.
For both our sakes, but mostly yours, I hope they survive all this when we can do that again.
I really hope so. I hope theaters survive in general.
Me too. We're getting close to an hour, I believe. I think we're actually over, which I wasn't paying attention at the time, so we got to start winding down. Thoth, this has been incredible. Thank you for being... we'll say first guest. Forward was more guest 0, because that was before we really had a name for him. We're like, let's just start it. But I feel like you're
nice thing to say.
I'm a computer scientist, and legit, we start counting at 0. If you start counting at 1, you've ignored the first unit, your element, and your array, and everything's bupkis after that. So you are he was element 0, you're element 1. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Thank you for talking about what you do and how you operate. It is greatly appreciated. I'm so excited to finally meet you in person at some point.
Right.
And I hope we can collaborate on something at some point in the future. That'd be really awesome.
Absolutely. This has been incredibly fun. I don't, I mean, it's like I was, yeah, it was like I was saying earlier. I kind of don't talk about myself very often unless I'm asked about it. So when the idea was propped to me to talk and help you out with this, it's like, yeah, I'll talk for an hour in front of a camera.
See, like, that's the
But
thing. I
no,
think there's something about the interview format that gets everybody involved, where, because, like, if you did this in life, it would be weird, but there's just something about the mechanics of, like, it's an interview that just makes it it's so much easier.
Right. And let me say, because you've been throwing praise at me here, you were a wonderful interviewer.
Oh, I didn't have to do that much. I get to like do the tiniest little flick, and you are off with wonderful stuff. So, but thank you.
That's me.
Thank you.
Not a problem. It was beyond an honor. It was beyond an honor to talk with you today.
Anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Sure. I'm Thoth Penswell. You can find me on Twitter at Thoth Penswell. You can also find some of the projects I run at RiffPonies on Twitter. That's a lot of the content that I put out. That's where we put them through. We run panels through that. We're probably going to be running a few at a convention next month, HarmonyCon, hoping so. Haven't got confirmation back yet. Other than that, I run movie nights on a Discord server, BlepCon. I also run midnight movies on the Film Discord. Both really great servers that I'm staff on. Follow all the other people that are connected with RiffPonies, please, because they're all amazing too. That includes Essential, as I said before. All incredibly talented people that I wouldn't be in a lot of places right now, but especially I probably wouldn't be in front of a camera right now if it weren't for all of them. Because above all else, it's the friends that I've made that have not only put me where I am now, but, made me who I am today. And that includes you, Kermit, who asked me to do this. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in front of a camera. That is a fact. You can't dispute
literally
that,
in this particular situation, that is a very true statement, and there's literally nothing I can do to dispute it.
No, you can't. But yeah, those are a few of the things. Film Discord, BlepCon, at Thoth Penswell on Twitter, at RiffPonies on Twitter, and all the other things connected to it. So yeah, those are some of the things.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Everybody go check out Thoth's amazing work. If you want to see more of me, you can see me riding Forward Progress's coattails on the Keeping Friendship Magic channel on YouTube and sometimes Twitter. I will sometimes guest on their podcast, and also that's where we put up episodes of my Pop Culture Talk Zone, which are mostly just Keeping Friendship Magic episodes where we talk about pop culture stuff, but it's more just sort of off the cuff. Forward usually comes in with less science, and we're just kind of freewheeling, which is usually why I'm driving, because it's just like, yep, let's go in that direction. And hopefully you will see more of these, which I'm hopefully calling the Grog Zone, which I know you will appreciate that I'm going to be hopefully recording sometime this weekend a Twilight Zone intro for it that I'm very excited for.
I was just about to comment. I literally have the complete series over there. So yeah,
gosh, so much
Twilight Zone.
I was just gonna bring that up, but like we're out of time. So much more to talk to. Barely scratched the surface. Maybe we'll do another of these long down the line. But thanks for joining us, and have a good one, everybody. Bye bye.
See you in the movies.
See you in the funny papers, kid.